Lurking in the shadows, cloaked by the pure fears of every knight in shining armor, armed with as little as a couple daggers and the sheer terrors of his foes, lies the rogue.
I'm not here for the troll. No. I'm here for the rogues.
So today we're making a Rondel dagger, and to get things started, we're going to make the blade out of a low layer damascus that we then twist. That low layer will give us a very bold, striking pattern. The only trick is we have to make sure our forge welds are perfect on the first go, otherwise we'll be forced to restack it, and that'll make our pattern less bold. It'll still be cool, but it's really important to get it right on the first try.
Now, clearly we forged out way more material than we need for the Rondel. But what we're going to do is we're going to take this piece right here, set it aside, and we're going to use it for, well, let's just call it a part 2 of this episode that'll come a little later. Now, before doing the actual twisting of the Damascus, I like to make sure I get as much of that loose scale off as possible. You can use a wire brush, but I got a wire wheel right here, and it works great.
Something that I do that I don't see a lot of other makers do when twisting Damascus is I like to go back to the forge after the first round of twisting, get it up to forging heat, and go back to the power hammer and give it some nice light touches. You see, when you're twisting, you often can twist too much and actually shear your material. And I feel like if you go back to forge welding temperature and then back to the hammer, you're making everything solid again, and then you can continue twisting even more than you would have been able to do if you just twisted it all in one heat. A lot of times when I make Rondel daggers, I like to forge the triangular shape right into the forging. It saves you a lot of time in the grinding. However, in this case, we've done some twist Damascus, and to reveal the star-like pattern, you have to grind into it at least a third of the way. So what we want to do is just forge out a round spike and then grind the rest of the shape. That way we'll get a really nice Damascus pattern. I've always liked to refer to these rondels as medieval can openers, or perhaps medieval fatalities, because the very last thing you would do in combat is pull out your rondel. That triangular shaped dagger would allow you to punch right through armor, and once you have them debilitated on the ground, this is the way you would truly finish him.
Alright, now that we got all of our scale ground off our nice tapered round spike, it's time to turn that to a triangular one.
The thing I love the most about these 2x72 grinders that I use from Broadbeck Ironworks is the many different attachments they have and how easy you can switch them off and on. In this case, I'm using a platen to get my initial flats, and then I can put the waterfall platen on really quickly and be able to really sight down the blade and make sure everything's nice and true. After that, I move to a very soft 14-inch contact wheel to smooth all my lines out. Alright, so this is where we're at. The blade is slightly chunky at this point, and the reason being sometimes with oddly shaped blades, like a 3-sided spike, or with twist damascus, you can get some warpage or even some twisting after the quench during the heat treat. So I left myself plenty of material to be able to grind things back true if needed after the heat treat. And I don't mind grinding blades after they're heat treated anyway. And well, the bulk of it's already done, so I think we're pretty safe right here to go ahead and get this thing heat treated. Now the reason the Rondel dagger got its name Rondel is because it has 2 rondels, or discs, either at the guard or at the pommel, terminating the handle on either side. Now as far as the design goes for the Rondel dagger that I'm going to be making today, I want to use a lot of in-game inspiration, but the designs are kind of conflicting. Like this dagger here is super fancy, but you never even really get to use it. So what I did is I studied a bunch of historical Rondel daggers, and I noticed that there's one thing in common with both the video game and a lot of daggers from history, and that is this sandwich construction for the Rondel, and some different elements in the designs, such as roping and some of these little file marks. So I'm going to incorporate as much of this into my own design, creating basically my own design that's inspired by both history and the video game. To get things started on the guard, I'm first going to make the front facing disc. I'm going to make it in a Gothic style, which basically means I'm going to add some really aggressive scoops all the way around it, and once I have this made, I'll be able to make a pattern off of it to then make all the pieces that follow. Just want to take a second and thank our Patreons. It really helps support this channel, and for as little as $1 a month, you can get early access to new videos, you can get insider project updates of things we're working on off camera, and it really helps us to be able to build more videos and more projects like this one for you.
In order for the pieces of the hilt to index properly onto our tang, we both have to have a square tang and square holes through every piece of the hilt. Now that all fits, we can start adding in that final detail and then proceed on with the other pieces of the handle. With the more pronounced scoops, if you will, now established, it's time to start adding in the smaller notches on the corners. So for the main guard, or the main rondel, I took the overall inspiration for the shape off of this historical piece. But for the overall construction of the guard, I'm going to be doing a sandwich piece like this. It's going to incorporate 2 steel plates with a piece of wood that has some roping that's sandwiched in between. So to do that, you got to create that second plate and the piece of wood that goes in between.
Another thing that I noticed in the in-game pieces as well as historical pieces is that they most often have spiral fluted handles. Sometimes they're segmented, sometimes they're all in one piece. So that's definitely something we're gonna have to add. And I usually do my spiral handles pretty fast, all on the grinder using different little contact wheels that I've made. But today I wanna show you how to do them with the most basic of tools, simply using a file.
I like to use a triangular shaped file to start off, going quite lightly, just basically marking my lines where they're going to be. And once those are established, you can start getting really aggressive really fast.
For the pommel of our dagger, I thought it would be cool to forge this old chunky piece of rebar, basically upset it into the shape we want and then forge it from there. Now with rebar, it can be kind of tricky because they basically melt down whatever steel they have on hand, so sometimes it doesn't like to forge, but I thought it would add a fun challenge to this project.
Now that the base of our parts exist and this thing is looking good, it's time to start making it look even better by adding in the details that we found in both historical pieces and in the in-game versions, starting with some of the roping, and then we're going to move on to even finer details.
This project is just about complete. All the parts exist. Now we just have to bring out the pattern in the Damascus blade itself. And to do that, I'm going to be using an awesome product called Gator Piss. You see, when I first found out about Gator Piss, I thought it just replaced your coffee etch. See, normally you have to etch your depth for your Damascus with ferric chloride, and then you clean it all off, and then you dunk it into coffee and leave it in there for who knows how long, sometimes overnight, to get your contrast. And well, that's a lot of trouble and a lot of pain, and sometimes you just don't have time for it, and even when you do have time, the coffee doesn't always work. But the unique thing about gator piss is that it etches both your depth and your color, gives you the contrast that you love and the depth that you need all in one shot. And it's definitely a product that I highly recommend. I hadn't tried it out until this project, and man oh man, did it make a world of difference and really left us with a great finish. All I had to do was neutralize it afterwards, put a little oil on it, and it was good to go.
Just go to bakerforge.com/gatorpiss and use my promo code GP10 for 10% off your first order and discover the magic that is gator piss. No self-respecting rogue would ever be caught dead with a shiny weapon that would work as a reflector in the shadows, giving his position away. So we're going to use some bluing compound and a Scotch-Brite pad and just scrub these pieces until they get nice and dark. And darker. And darker.
I think this dagger turned out absolutely awesome. I'm really happy with it. And make sure you go to Baker Forge and Tool to check out their gator piss. It'll change your life if you're doing any kind of etching. It's the way to go. And this Rondel can be yours. It's for sale right now on thatworks.shop. Let me know in the comments below if there's any more weapons from Dark and Darker you'd love to see made. It's just full of historically accurate weapons that I'd love to try and tackle. And if you enjoyed this historical build, be sure to check out this one, which happens to be my favorite, right here.